believe we have a quorum. I see that people around.
Yep.
Can we do a roll call, Tanya?
Yes. All right, Chair Delview,
Present.
Chair Hecht, Commissioner Whedon, Commissioner Liu, present, Commissioner Mine, present, Commissioner Van Rees, present, and Commissioner Texler is absent. So we have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda? Nobody in the meeting room and no one online?
Yeah, I don't see any hands raised. So I think
Okay.
we're good.
All right, let's move on then. And to the Environmental Commission minutes, do I have any edits, questions, comments from the commissioners on the meeting minutes from the last meeting in September?
And before we take a vote, Commissioner Whedon sent in some corrections that I already changed, added to the minutes. So for item number 4, if there's any other ones other than that.
Okay, if there are none additional ones.
I'll move acceptance of the minutes as revised. I'll second that.
Okay. Everyone in favor of approving the minutes? Okay. Motion passes.
All right, next one on the agenda is the commission updates.
Sorry, just give me a second.
Yes, I did.
I'm on the presentation. Share my screen. I'm really not happy today.
Can you double click on the top and
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I think, no, I did, but it was like 3 days ago. Right? Or no, would have been last week. You did not.
Okay, so we kind of went over some commission updates previously, I believe maybe in the August meeting. So the purpose of this presentation is to finish going over the updates that were completed over the past 6 months for all commissions. All these updates are specific to the Environmental Commission, and they're outlined in more detail in the staff report. So for members and meeting frequency, the number of commissioners did not change, but the frequency of meetings has been changed from 12 to 10, and that's with December and July being no meeting months. So those were the big changes there. For powers and duties, we did go over this last time, so this was updated, but I won't go over it again unless we have any questions later. For attendance and participation, so I'm sure you all already know that majority of members are required to be in person, so for commissioners must be in person for a meeting to take place. Commissioners must attend 75% of regularly scheduled meetings in the calendar year, so 7 out of the 10 meetings. And then commissioners may attend no more than 20% of meetings remotely, which comes out to two meetings per year. And I think also maybe in May or June, we kind of went over that whole process, but feel free to email me, and there's a lot of little nuances to it, and I'll work with you on that if that's a need. So the council, commission, and joint meetings. So in Q1 of each calendar year, the commission will provide a work plan, and commissions will provide an annual report to the council at the joint meeting. So I know we've all been kind of waiting on when this will be, and we just heard from the city manager, and they will tentatively take place the second January meeting or the first February meeting. The plan is to cover these meetings over 2 of the meetings, so 5 commissions at one meeting and 4 at the other, which we can decide at a later date what we feel works best for our commission. All right, ad hoc subcommittees. So for these ad hoc subcommittees, they cannot be standing. They don't require posting. Meetings can, they don't have to be public meetings. They don't have to have staff support or meeting minutes, but they do have to have a specific topic and time frame, and they cannot be an area of continuing jurisdiction. They cannot be established in multiple years, and we must report the findings out to the full commission at the end of the year, and commissioners can only serve on one subcommittee at a time.
So that pretty much means no more than 2, 3 commissioners, subcommittees,
Yeah,
or, if we need to have more than it's 2.
so it would be a max of 3 commissioners per ad hoc, or 2 ad hoc subcommittees with 3 commissioners. And that's up to the commission's discretion, depending on the work plan and the need. So moving forward, we'll be starting from scratch, and all previous standing committees will be disbanded. For subcommittees that did not get to complete the work, for example, for the single-use plastics or the MWENDO, if there's a need for those to be picked back up, I believe that's okay. But as long as there wasn't, it hasn't been standing for a year and there was a report out given, and then we continue with the work. And if individual commissioners want to work on items they're interested in, that should be fine depending on the need, as long as there's reporting back to the entire commission the work.
Question, or are we just, are we asking questions at the end?
Yeah, I can do questions at the end.
Okay.
If that's okay. So, and I'll go over the rest pretty quickly. Commissioner liaison, so they're not required to attend each meeting. Council liaisons are not required to attend every meeting. Our council liaison is Mr. Pete Daly, and so council liaison shall not direct, guide, or unduly influence the policy-making work of the city's advisory bodies. And there will be a minimum of 1 joint meeting with the commission chair and the staff liaison per year. All right, this is the conflict of interest is something that everyone should kind of look over and read on their own. But essentially, what I would like to say today is that if there's any concern for conflict of interest, to please contact me immediately, and we can go from there. And then So for next steps, the city clerk is gonna route the handbook for signature. So please look out for that email and sign that promptly after reviewing the updated handbook. Then I think we already adopted our work plan unless we are gonna make changes, but we've already kind of done that step. And then, one thing I wanted to flag for everyone is if there's anything that you want to discuss with council that's related to the work plan, to start making that list, and we can discuss that at our next meeting. And then we can also decide which meeting we would prefer to go to in January or February, whatever makes sense for everyone. And then, yeah, any questions?
I had a question on, you said if a member wants to work on a topic by themselves and then report out to, is this different from, things we just are interested in and you report in commissioner updates, or could it be something that proposed to the commission and then the commission said, sure, that sounds worth doing? By
Yeah, I
one
think
commissioner, is that
as it relates to
effectively
the-
an ad hoc subcommittee of one?
I think it's as it relates to the work plan or the projects. So for example, Carl was working on, or
Mhm.
is working on the EV at the EV fair.
Mhm.
That's not a subcommittee or an ad hoc
Mhm, yeah,
committee. It's just him providing support on that. Yeah. that's an
So
example.
does somebody need to get approval to work on that? Or do they ask you to work on something, or do they ask the
Yeah.
Yeah.
commission?
I think it would,
What's the process?
I think it would go through me and then it would be brought to the commission.
Okay.
So it also kind of somewhat depends on what kind of like Nicholas elaborate is just if it's gonna be like kind of, are you doing some research? Are you gonna kind of do something that you're like kind of like creating, something that truly could be like presented to the commission? It's like, hey, look, I just spent, the last 3 months working on this. It's a really super great, thing we could, support and kind of like actually support as a commission? Or are you going out there as, like kind of in an official capacity as an, environmental? Then we're gonna have to talk a little bit more intricately about exactly what it is, because then you are essentially almost acting as an individual subcommittee. So we just would have to kind of look at exactly what that might look like. But I mean, I've had commissioners before in other jurisdictions where like they just work on a really great program and kind of come up with it, I'm thinking of someone that was a college student that was also on the Sustainability Commission in San Diego County. So, they did a really great job of kind of preparing something for us to consider. So, but it was kind of in addition to everything else the commission was already doing.
So I think, Tanya clarified that, but I just want to make sure we all understand, like, specifically in the case of Commissioner Van Rees, for example, who is the liaison for the EV fair. Does it mean that it counts as an ad hoc subcommittee, or can it be sitting on other subcommittees as well? Because it's just one person liaising with the various parties involved in the setting up of the EV fair.
To my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that would not be a one-person ad hoc subcommittee.
Right.
So he could be on another subcommittee.
Okay, so we can as a commission delegate one commissioner to a specific task, for example. That wouldn't count as an ad hoc subcommittee. In a similar situation.
It wouldn't be for every project or every item on the work plan. It would
Yeah, no, I
be
get it. I'm
special
just,
situation.
yeah.
And if you.
And then just for clarification also again, my understanding is that meetings with the council will happen after the council retreat, which I think happens early January. Are we pretty clear that it's going to be the second meeting of January or the first meeting of February, or can that be pushed into a later date? Do we have a sense? Is that firm in terms of when we can meet with the council?
I think, yeah, that's pretty firm. If there is a special need for us to go in the second meeting of February, that can be accommodated, but I think the preference from the city manager and council is that they want those, the second meeting in January and the first meeting in February to make it,
All right.
for us to make those work.
So I think the only point I would make is that we'll have one meeting, since we don't have a December meeting unless we want to have a special meeting. We'll have one meeting to finalize our meeting with the council.
Yes, that's correct.
It probably should be on the agenda as well for the first meeting in January.
Yes. And then Commissioner Texler.
So is that in a regular council meeting that these meetings with commissions are gonna happen? Just curious, because they've always been special meetings.
Do you know? if it's
It's
related?
probably noticed as a special meeting,
Okay,
But-
yeah,
but in practical terms, it's,
but it's not a regular business meeting. It's not like,
Not necessarily, no, but it might be on a normal meeting date.
yeah.
It just might start early for something like an item like this.
there's no
I think
other
in the past
agendas.
We've started at like maybe 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So it's
Because
similar
there's a lot
format
to get
that we've
through.
done.
There'll be, I think we'll split it into 2 nights and so each commission has half hour, 20 minutes or something.
Yeah. We're still working on like the details of how we would agendize something.
I was
like
just
this.
curious because it was sounding like it was gonna just be like half an hour in the middle of a full council meeting, so.
No.
But it's gonna be special. Committees, ad hoc subcommittees that carry over from next year, do they have to be reformed with different commissioners or can still be the same commissioners working on it? Just for continuity, and that's fine if you don't know the answer right now, but just.
Yeah, I think that that's like a special case since the subcommittees got, stopped due to, whatever reasons. That would be fine with me, but I think I would have to clarify.
I think fundamentally, we also have to look at, whatever comes out of the council one-on-one with each individual commission as the work plan might adapt and change a little bit. So for example, I'll be talking about dark skies in a couple items from now, and that's something that just got given to the commission. So that's gonna be a little bit of a pivot of what we've been doing. So realistically is the check-in with the council about the work plan is gonna be kind of like the reset and prioritization for the rest of the calendar year of 24. So, kind of obviously in the in-between right now still.
And then my last question was, did all council, commission terms should switch to end in September? Okay, so like my term was supposed to end in April, I think. It isn't, is it now ending in September or is it still ending? Okay,
It went to September. Yeah,
I don't think.
if there's an issue with individual commissioners that really kind of were planning certain things for their own personal lives, we'll obviously just have to talk about that offline and then inform commissions in general.
One more question off the slides. Can you clarify the phrase continuing jurisdiction? That means,
On the subcommittees,
yeah.
So
So
it's
that one,
with it too.
yeah, cannot be an area of continuing jurisdiction.
so something that would last more than like a year.
Oh,
Wait,
okay. But
so
the line
that's-
after that,
Yeah.
cannot be established in multiple years. So it has to be a very specific.
What's the difference between those two? Continuing jurisdiction in multiple years.
I'm not sure if there really is. I think it,
Does that mean calendar years? I
Yes.
think I can, for some clarification. So the bullet that says cannot be an area of continuing jurisdiction means that the subject matter for the ad hoc committee should be ad hoc. If it's continuing jurisdiction, it should be taken up by the commission as a whole or a standing committee or some other mechanism. So if it's something the city deals with year after year after year, then it's not appropriate for an ad hoc committee.
So like the CAP implementation,
What's a standing committee? Do we,
We don't have.
okay.
Commissions don't tend to have them. There are rules by which we could establish them, but we, as a norm, I guess we haven't. We have some on council, but I don't think there may, I don't know, Nick could say about planning, they might be the one commission that has some standing committee or something.
So I mean, fundamentally, so I'll just kind of go back to the main issue is that there really isn't one at base level is the ad hoc subcommittees are not to exist for more than 1 year of time. So, and fundamentally, I think that also in practicality for also what I know this commission, since I've been at the city the last year and a half for, is at the end of the day, it's not that you guys want to end the work that you're doing, but you want to end the task and then go to the next thing. We have a cap with various bullet points and, deliverables that we want to move on. And if after a year of working on it individually or, in small group sessions or in tandem with just the staff, if we're not arriving at like the finish line, then it's probably ripe for the deployment of like some special outside consultation. And so I would say that that's actually probably like a really good thing where it's like, all right, well, hey, even to the council, it's like that annual check-in is, hey, we did just work on this as an ad hoc subcommittee individually in our own capacity, but we don't have enough to carry this over the finish line. Can we, under this next year's budget, leading up to 4 months from, our one-on-one, can we get a little bit of an allocation so that we can actually carry this across with some consultant services? So, I mean, really, this is kind of like we're getting back to like the really basics of like how it will actually get some of these things done and across the finish line.
any more questions? And if you think of any, just feel free to
One more, I
email.
guess, just to clarify one more time. So once the formation of the subcommittee, ad hoc subcommittee will happen at the commission meeting, presumably.
Yes. Mhm.
But then that ad hoc committee, once it's established, can start working, meeting,
Mhm.
right away without having to, bring staff in. And then are only required to report out at the end. They can come in and report out in between as well, but at the end, they are required to report out for sure.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And we can have like a section on the agenda for ad hoc committee report outs if there's something substantial that needs to be reported in a regular meeting.
Well, I would hope that ad hoc committees could come back to the commission and report on progress, not just once at the end. And get feedback from the commission, like I've done in the past for the Reach Goals, like we've done in the past for the CAP and some other big projects.
Definitely. If there's something substantial, I think definitely we will have report outs. But if it's not necessary for every meeting, then.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Any more questions?
All right, I think we can move to the next agenda item.
Yeah. Yeah, next agenda item is the election of the chair and the vice chair. And that's from now until September 2024. I think as the election of the chair and the vice chair has been set for every October now.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, right. So, all right. So election of the vice chair and vice chair. Do we have any nominees?
That's one question first. Could we remind everybody who held the positions in the last 2 years, just so if anybody knows that has that knowledge?
In 20, go ahead.
Well, before Bruno, Don was chair. And Bruno was your vice chair, correct?
Yeah, so Don as the chair and you as the vice chair, right? And then you as the chair and myself as the vice chair, and then I was chair, and then Tom Hester as the vice chair, right?
Don was the chair. And
My-
then, and then handed it to you.
Was I after you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
So yeah, Before Bruno it was Laura, and before Laura it was
Yeah.
Don, and
And then,
Yeah.
okay.
then typically the vice chairs have been
Yeah.
chairs the next year.
All right,
Most
so,
commissions sort of rotate this, right? Most other commissions, you don't have to follow, it's not a hard, fast rule, but most other commissions will say, who hasn't had a turn yet? You know, and whoever has the most seniority on the commission that hasn't yet had a turn is the logical choice. And it's not always who ends up being chair isn't always the person who has the most skill at being chair, but that's good because we want everybody to participate and build those skills. So that's been the thinking behind it. But you do not have to adhere to that specifically if you have a good reason.
To nominate Tom as chair, Commissioner Hecht as Vice Chair Hecht as chair.
I'll second that.
I'll nominate you. As chair.
Wait,
I think we would make a
Maybe one
vote.
Well, I
nomination
think
and
Yeah.
vote.
there's
I
two
think
things,
like-
I think I read in the changes to the thing, to the commissions, it says, I think that they did in here recommend, and I can't find it right now, but I thought I read this afternoon that they recommend rotating the chair. And then if we're following the same rules we've had previously in the nominations, a nomination is brought to the floor and that one is discussed thoroughly and voted on before another nomination can come up.
Yeah.
Unless the rules of that have changed.
That, I think that makes sense to conduct it that way. So, did you want to discuss the nomination?
so do we have two nominations? I'm sorry,
Yeah, I nominated Rashina, but she declined. Right away.
oh, okay.
we haven't gotten into it. We can follow.
All right, so we have Tom, right, as the nominee?
Yes.
And, okay, good, all right. Any objections?
You have to vote, we have to vote.
Yeah, we have to vote and then go around the table.
There's no discussion and then.
Yeah, if there's no discussion, we could just take a vote. Okay, sounds good. Okay, let's take a vote. Chair Delview,
Yes,
okay. Commissioner Texler,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hecht,
Yes, I guess.
you take a vote on yourself.
Yeah.
Commissioner Whedon,
Yes.
okay, Commissioner Liu,
Yes,
Commissioner Humayun,
Yes.
okay, Commissioner Van Rees.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes unanimously for Vice Chair Hecht to now be Chair Hecht. Okay.
congratulations, Tom.
What have you forgotten about?
I know, I can't believe I forgot.
Okay.
All right, moving on to the vice chair nomination. Actually, I would like to nominate Rashina Humayun as vice chair if she's willing to do it, since
I'll take that one.
Okay, anyone want to discuss? Okay, let's take a vote. Chair Delview,
yes,
okay, Commissioner Texler,
Yes.
Chair Hecht,
Yes,
Commissioner Whedon,
Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
yes.
Commissioner Humayun.
Yep.
Commissioner Van Rees.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes for Commissioner Humayun to now be vice chair.
all right, thank you very much. Congratulations, Rashina. Congratulations, Tom. And good
Thank
luck
you so much,
with your
Bruno,
new tasks.
amazing leadership over the past year and a quarter. For driving so much of our agenda and our work plan forward. Thanks, Tom. For that as well.
So in the past, at this point, the new chair starts running the meeting.
That's correct.
Yeah.
all right, so I'm on the hook.
Yes.
Did you?
Now it's all yours, Tom. You're in charge.
Commissioner Delview can help you a little. We'll let you have some help.
So I guess now we move on to informational items. and specifically a presentation on, I'm not skipping anything, am I?
Oh,
No.
Great.
On the building permits.
Okay, let me pull up that PowerPoint.
Well, thank you guys for having me here. This is very entertaining. Um, My name is Veronica Tinoco, building official for those that don't know me. And I've been asked to come tonight to go over the permitting process for solar, electric vehicles, energy storage systems, and heat pumps. And her computer's gonna take a while, so.
Not looking promising right here. Quick question while that's coming up, is this related to replacements or is this also apply to new?
So
Build.
everything. Next reading. So the first slide, I just put together, this year up till today, how many, permits we've issued. And then also how many permits we've issued for, 2022. So you'll see 303 solar, 119, PV with energy storage systems, 46 standalone energy storage systems. That's not standalone off grid. That's just, they already have PV, they're adding energy storage. We probably have maybe 2 off grid systems. 50 electric vehicle charging stations. And this number I think is low because, everybody puts them in with their construction. So if they're doing an addition, if they're doing a new home, they're putting EV in, so we don't see that number because it's not a standalone permit. 79 heat pumps for mechanical. So this is when they're replacing their furnace with a heat pump. And these are all voluntary right here. This is not part of, you know, if they're doing a new house or anything like that. It's voluntary, 79 permits. And then heat pump water heaters, 12. So we're seeing more of them, but kind of not a lot yet.
When
And
you
that's
say voluntary, you just mean that they're,
so like if their system needs, if their system is
okay.
needing to be replaced, they're replacing it with electric.
Does include new houses because they must have.
Yeah, the new houses are built into the single family dwelling permit, so we don't see those numbers. I could give you numbers on those, but anyhow, they're increasing. If you can see from 2022, we have, the year is not even done and we have more than we did last year. So on to the next slide is the actual.
1 second, I want to get a picture of that slide. Previous one, sorry.
I can see.
And just off
You
the
can
top
send
of your
it.
head,
That's fine.
just off the top of your head, do you know, like, the heat pump, as opposed to standard, non-heat pump?
I could give you that number. I don't.
Do you
that
know off the
number's
top of your head is like much bigger than that?
Of the
Yeah.
ones that are still gas?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot higher than
Like
that.
5x, 10x, do you know?
Probably 4 times that number.
Yeah, because I think people still like tankless, you know, because of the size is very small, right? You know,
Yeah,
I think people are.
just, you know, these ones right here that you see, they have to change out the whole infrastructure,
Right.
so. It just depends on where they are, like financially and, you know, if they're planning on doing construction with it, makes it easier to swap them out. If they're not, it costs a lot of money, time and labor. So.
Well, I think part of the, yeah, I think part of the issue for both heat pumps actually, if it's a replacement only, very often these break down and then people have to replace them, and usually installers show up with a gas heat pump very
Yeah.
often. And if you don't plan for it before it breaks down, you end up with a gas furnace or, you know, regular water heater, which because you have the electricals, you have, it's a very different kind of installation, right? So very often plumbers are not equipped to install heat pumps. And that's really what we need to work on in terms of education, in terms of helping people understand that they have to plan.
Yeah,
It doesn't work.
yeah, I think we're gonna have some time for discussion and questions after, so
Right.
continue.
Next slide is the actual process. So this is the permit process for the PV, EV, energy storage and mechanical heat pump, so replacing the furnaces. So we received the application electronically. We verify that they have all of the information needed to process the application or do the intake of it. Then we route it for review, and state law says we can give them 2 days, so we give them 2 days to review it. They review it, we're notified, we being the front end staff, permit technicians, are notified that it's either approved or disapproved. It's approved, when it's approved, we notify the applicant to pay the fees, and then the permit's issued. If it's disapproved, we send them the comments, they resubmit whenever they decide to resubmit. We do the same process over again for 2 days, it gets reviewed, if it gets approved, it gets issued. So that is for PV, EV, energy storage and heat pumps. The next one is for, excuse me, heat pump water heaters. This is truly an over-the-counter permit or a quick permit, we like to call it. We receive the application, we tell them to pay, we issue the permit. So pre-COVID, it would have been just done at the front counter, and now it's just done. What I like to call our front counter is just our email. We have it emailed to us, and once they receive our email and pay the fees, we send them their permit, they're on their way. And the next slide is just our goals for permitting, and by September of 2024, we're gonna begin using the Solar App Plus to automate the permit process for PVs and energy storage systems, and then offer online permitting for permits that do not require a plan review. That's it.
Do you ask at all for heat pumps if they have applied for any sort of rebates or is there any sort of information exchange about rebates available?
So currently, no, not through us. However, Tanya and I have spoken, and we are working on ways to get that information out to people. We've talked about adding it to the signature line of the permit technicians who communicate directly with the public when people ask questions. That way they have links, adding a page to our website. So currently, no, but there are plans to try to get that information out there. We used to have stuff that used to sit on the front counter, like brochures and like flyers and whatnot, but we don't have the foot traffic anymore to make that worthwhile.
Could it be within the permit application at all? Like,
So our permit application is a universal application, but Tanya and I also spoke about maybe having a separate application where that's attached to it. And that would make it easier for people to see and want to apply for it.
So the only issue though too, that we're kind of seeing as a part of the conversation is a lot of these permits are just applied by the contractor that's doing the work. And they don't care. Honestly, they're not gonna get back to their clients and talk about, I mean, they're already under contract to do the work. So when they're the ones that are getting essentially paid to do the permit application and everything, they're not gonna, go after the rebate. So we really should actually more so probably figure out the way to kind of really kind of develop how it is on our website or whatever other method that we want to kind of share it. Just because of these permits are really the ones that we usually see the contractors coming in or submitting for, or honestly, permit runners, that's literally just what they do in droves of, a batch of 20 for the day for water heaters, in Santa Clara County.
So since you're doing online right now, so you could capture the applicants like email. And then you could send the rebate information to them. So they are applying on behalf, the contracts are on behalf of the resident, right?
So yes, but so privacy law does not allow us just to arbitrarily send information
Mhm.
proactively.
Okay, right.
So we can't actually do that. One of the big things though that we could do is like in like the city manager's newsletter. And certain things like, so one of the things that I'm gonna push for next year is for the city to send out essentially just like a small like postcard to every single brick and mortar either store. But also then private residents in the city with a QR code that then literally takes them to on their phone where they can pick up like which newsletter they want to sign up to. Because that's one of the biggest things is that we either have people that have moved out of the city, so a lot of the people that are getting the newsletter, they just ignore it. Or they, in like erroneously signed up for it on accident, or there's just some folks that they just don't realize that it really is that simple just to sign up for some of these newsletters for us to be able to push out information like that. But we kind of need to do the mass thing where essentially almost every household gets that opportunity to sign up for the kind of almost the local guerrilla advertising, kind of taking it back a little bit. But that's actually worked in other jurisdictions I've been in. So yeah, we have to be careful though with the just proactively sending out stuff if they haven't actually signed up for it.
Okay.
And as SVCE customers, do they send that information out?
Yeah, I
regularly?
get those.
Yeah,
Yes, I
so-
get all those rebate information.
Yeah, so if they're already doing that,
Yeah.
But that's just SVC.
Mhm.
yeah,
Manufacturing.
all the other, the other ones.
So,
Do we have a feeling for how our process and fees compare to neighboring jurisdictions? Like, are we best in class? Are we kind of average? Do we know?
So
Both in terms of times and fees and simplicity.
So I think we are very comparable to our neighboring jurisdictions when it comes to the permitting process, like the turnaround time. The fees are regulated by the state for solar, so we were capped at $450. Can't charge any more than that.
No,
for
we can
residents.
charge less.
Could we? Yeah,
Yeah.
we could, but I mean, we're doing a fee study, so we could determine.
Yeah, we're doing a comprehensive fee study right now that's gonna be looking at, all city fees for everything. So.
I
So-
think you can see from the numbers, though, PV is not the issue. They will put PV on their home
No, yeah.
all day. long. They love it.
But I was wondering more about like the heat pumps, kind of some of the new stuff that people are just getting going and whether we've thought about whether we can incent them with fees, lower fees for heat pumps as opposed to gas, or increase the gas.
It's based on valuation currently. So that is something that we're talking to the consultants about in the fee study, but right now, if they come in and tell us that it costs $15,000 to install because it's based on labor and materials, then their permit's gonna be anywhere from $150 to $300.
So heat pumps more than a gas pump, they're gonna get hit with higher fees.
The value, it's based on valuation.
This is part
Does
of
it have to be based on valuation?
No.
No.
Part
Not
of what we're doing with the fee
Yeah,
study.
not for some of the fees. So just so the commission fully understands, is the city of Los Altos has not done a comprehensive fee study in over 2 decades. We have only raised rates by CPI. So actually, there's certain things that we're actually, so just so you know, valuation wise, we're actually extremely subsidized. Where we're about 1/4 of the cost of some of our neighboring jurisdictions when it comes to the valuation table. So I don't think we should really kind of try to ascertain whether or not we're being somewhat of an impediment financially yet, because realistically, we're heavily subsidizing general building construction costs. And we have for over 2 decades because of the lack of a comprehensive update, but certain kind of like the one-stop shop, almost like quick over-the-counter permits, you can, because there's the nexus for like water heaters is one of the main requirements in order to have a habitable structure, for example. So a lot of people just say, yep, it's a flat rate fee, $100, you're out the door, bye.
Yeah, I think that fee study will be good, but what I'm more thinking about is not decreasing the overall bucket of money you're taking in, but increase kind of the old technology, fees for the old technology and decrease fees for the new technologies. So you incent them to move. You might even be able to raise more money if people are still putting in gas, but you really reduce the fees on anything electric. That's more what I'm thinking. Again, I think it'd be great to see the fee study, but I think to the extent you can incent them at the desk with $100 lower fee, that might help.
Veronica, it looks like you're making progress on this and but my understanding is Silicon Valley Clean Energy has provided some incentives to do online for heat pumps and things like that. They have an incentive to their membership to help you get online permitting for these things. So as you're probably working, and my basic question is, does a September deadline meet their requirements?
Yeah, so
Okay,
the
so that's-
September is the
but-
deadline.
And I think some of their incentives that they're talking about go along with what Tom's explaining here, ways to incentivize the transition to electric things. And by the way, I'll just add one other comment. I just put in a heat pump heating system and the permitting went very quickly.
It's also the contractor too. The contractor that you pick makes a huge difference on the permitting.
So also my basic question there is, that Silicon Valley Clean Energy is trying to get some things that the whole membership of Santa Clara County is moving forward on things, and the online permitting is one and incentives for the electric is the other. And it seems like you're paying attention to that. And I just wanted to make sure that that's the case.
We have some challenges with the online stuff, but we're getting there.
Question. So time wise, I know we're doing the fees, fee structure study, but time wise, does it take about the same amount of time if I'm applying for a permit for a gas versus
Yes.
the electric heat pump? It's the same process, same time. So I'm wondering if we could prioritize one over the other. Is that as also an incentive? that we-
So once they've
Good.
submitted their application, they've already made the decision to go electric, so you're not really incentivizing them anymore. You're really trying to, you have to
Right.
sell them on the idea of electric.
Right, but
So-
if I'm thinking of doing something because I have a flaky heater and I'm thinking,
Yeah,
what do I get if I say, maybe it'll take me 1 week to get this permit and 2 to get this other permit, maybe.
Yeah.
That'll be an incentive as well, wondering, I don't know.
so make it longer for the gas and
Well,
shorter for
I don't know if
electric.
that's legal, but make it shorter for
Tell
them.
them they have to get the gas permit from PG&E.
And then while they were working on the cap, we were talking about possibility of adding on something like a natural gas. Not the word tax, but something, fees for using natural gas. And I realize that, and we realize that, I don't know if we made it's in the cap or not at some point to do that, but I'm wondering if during the permit phase, there is an option of adding on what would be the cost to the city to not coming up with the right words, to
You mean gas
to
tax?
replace, to do amendment or to, for that amount of CO2 that equipment's gonna use versus, I'm wondering. Offset, that's the word, yes. So I'm wondering if that's legal or it's something to consider to make the fees a little bit higher for gas, and then people should know that, okay, this is because the city needs to, plant, more trees to, or
I don't
100
know
more
if
trees
that's
to get.
something that we could
So the reason why the fee study is really important, is in California, everything is based on Nexus. And so we have had to tabulate exactly how many hours it takes to inspect, to drive to the home, to review the permit, to approve the permit, to route the permit, to give everything, like literally it's all broken down to like in a table format. That has to go into our Nexus study. So if we ever were to, like what you're saying is on the helm or precipice of potentially getting sued, essentially, it's whether or not it's legal or not, we have to be able to have all of that to be able to show that. So we know how much it takes to review the permit type, regardless of what type of fuel it is. It would not be legally defensible to charge one a higher rate in regards to the permit. So if there's other ways, and if you guys hear about how other jurisdictions are charging essentially and kind of dinging almost, I guess, for a different fuel type, we're happy to look into it, but in regards to the permit type, I mean, that's why this fee study is obnoxiously expensive because of the fee consultants that have to like really reverse engineer it every way to Sunday. Unfortunately, trust me and Veronica want to pull our hair out with the spreadsheets we keep on filling out.
Are you aware of any cities that do that? Was that discussed? during the
No,
meeting?
the idea just came to me, so I was wondering if that's a thing. But if we have something where we, every time we get a permit, we have to do the calculation study of
Right.
how this impacts the environment, maybe that's a valid way of increasing the fee.
Yeah, and I almost think that's maybe something for like the regional partners to be like, so like AQMD, because of it being like a regional kind of quantified kind of issue is that if these types of appliances, for better, use of word, is omitting whatever, CO2, whatever, that upon purchase, it's almost kind of like, the recycling, kind of
Mhm.
tariff,
Mhm.
is what you get. And I honestly think that's actually more so where it would end up coming from, is the regional kind of side of that, because they actually have a lot more, leniency with, the fee structures, things like that.
So the state offers a rebate for seismic upgrades. And because they offered that rebate, we got an influx of permit applications for seismic. So somebody might want to look into how the state advertised or marketed their $3,000 rebate, 4,000, something like that.
Do you include to how long it typically takes to get a solar permit?
Yeah, it's 2 days.
That is 2 days as well? Okay.
Well, so it's reviewed for 2 days, so it all depends on, the back and forth between us and the
Yeah.
contractor and paying and all that stuff, but it's 2 days.
Yeah, so the Solar Plus app, so me and Veronica both looked at it. I don't know if you guys, if anybody's even just Googled it and like watched the little demo video that they have, that's, I mean, it's a government essentially hosted website. Is essentially the premise of it is that like you'll get the permit once you get to the finish line of your application and everything, but essentially it's like locked fields. You cannot move forward to like the full like meat and potatoes of paying for your permit at the end unless you give us every single ounce of data. So it really does actually put the onus on like the permit runners, which Veronica used to even be a permit runner back in the day. So I mean, she knows this, like unfortunately sometimes there's some of those people that are in that component of the process that they're just getting enough just to get the submission in to start the process, and not giving us everything that we need. That's unfortunately probably the biggest, I would say, issue that we have with going back and forth is the people that are kind of the in between of the contractor and the people paying for the service to actually be completed. It's the middleman that's actually going and running and doing, kind of the permit acquisition.
Yeah. We haven't had any complaints with solar and our turnaround times, but if you guys ever have feedback from public or anybody, we'd love to hear it.
Any complaints on any of those products? Or
So,
material complaints? Of course you have complaints, but like consistent.
so none of these really, but like, it was air conditioners for a while. We had issues with those ones, just because they, we had a lot of requirements before we changed the code.
Noise issues.
Yeah, so we required a lot. We required them to submit spec sheets and tell us the decibel rating and the distance to property line, every single property line on the site and all of this stuff. And it was a lot of back and forth, and it did take a long time for people to get permits. But now that we've changed it and said if it's 5 feet away, have a permit. It's definitely made the process much smoother, so it's working well so far. Any other information you guys want to know? Energy storage systems, nothing, you're good?
Well, I was just gonna say the same, trying to incentivize energy storage as well. I agree with you that solar is so well established in the.
So is
ecosystems.
energy storage. They come in all day long for energy storage.
Even add-on.
Oh, yeah.
From,
So PV, system expansions, system changeouts, new systems, those ones just come in, we get like 10 a day. There's, just keep coming in.
Was there a significant uptick since the last, 6-day power outage? in some areas?
Yes,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, especially last winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot more people will consider ESS.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you guys could all see is even just from the permitting and from even just the PV side, which those are standalone PV installations, which was over 500, permits that were requested in 23 and 22. We have just over 10,000, single family homes in the city. So I mean, you're talking just from 2 years worth of, calendar data. We're talking about 5% of the city. That's hugely, that's a huge deployment. So I mean, I'd be interested to see if we looked at like the last 10 years of data from our permitting system that we've had to see exactly how many we could probably account for as standalone permits. And I mean, it's just, we have a lot for a city of our size.
It doesn't take into account the new solar, single family dwellings or ADUs, which all have solar. And all of the ADUs that come in have heat pumps.
Any other questions, comments?
Bruno? You awake?
No, I think you asked all the questions I would have asked, so I think it's pretty clear. Thank you for the presentation, Veronica. It was really good.
Welcome.
And I think, since you're going through the price structure for the permits, I think, basically from what you're hearing is that, if we could one way or another incentivize people to install heat pumps, specifically heat pumps, we're talking about heat pump water heaters and mechanical heat pumps, right? Whether it's through the fees or the time, I don't think the time it's possible, but through the fees, potentially, I think that would be useful. But, so anyway, so that's anything that can incentivize the installation of a heat pump versus a regular gas appliance would be extremely helpful since we're trying to electrify all the buildings in Los Altos. So.
Thanks so much for
Thank you very much.
You guys have a good night.
Thank you.
Tom, you probably want to ask for public comments if there are any on this.
Do we do public comments on informational items?
No.
I don't think we do.
Okay.
There's no public comments.
Have a good night.
The next item, there's 3 discussion items. The first is the dark skies ordinance. So I guess we'll let Tanya take it away.
Yes. Director Zorn's actually gonna present on that and
All right, so we're gonna, I'm gonna quickly go over it just because I think there might be more discussions regarding what we're gonna do or what the commission has been asked and tasked to do from the city council. So at the last city council, it was requested last year for development services to bring back just an item or discussion regarding or even a workshop, but we had a discussion and just regarding what dark skies is. And I'm gonna kind of, you can go to the next slide, go over what the dark skies kind of is. So I'm gonna give you kind of the quick rundown. It's similar that went to city council with a background overview of the principles, the existing regulations, and then the framework that we can kind of play in. So a dark sky ordinance fundamentally is a tool that can restrict or limit the outdoor lighting as defined by local ordinance. So there's a variety of different names in terms that jurisdictions are calling them. Dark skies is the one, Cupertino just adopted one not too long ago. Light trespass, light pollution, and then the foot candle rule. So all are kind of interchangeably the same. So this is kind of really a fundamental intent of what a dark sky ordinance actually is, which is a smart and efficient lighting in warmer tones with shields preventing skyward flow. And this is to be able to help restore the nighttime night sky from the oversaturation of light pollution. So the purpose fundamentally is kind of what we have displayed on the screen, which is to protect and reclaim the ability to view night sky. The kind of the tranquility is that there's that big aspect for the community component. Minimize light pollution and protecting against glare and excessive lighting, and provide standards for the efficient and moderate use of lighting. So this isn't talking about light efficiency as it is in regards to the energy consumption, but actually the efficient use of light. And then obviously the promotion of safe and efficient and cost-effective lighting for outside. So these are jurisdictions that all have similar regulations. So it is kind of sporadic through the state. There's not kind of like a really heavy oversaturation in one specific area, unfortunately, because realistically, that's actually really, in order to get really big benefits, you're going to need kind of more of a regional kind of address to some of these. But these are some of the big organizations that have done them. So the commission's kind of familiar with obviously with the CEC and kind of some of the background and fundamentals of what allows us to do some of the energy consumption and regulating beyond just what is the bare minimum. But in theory, one of the things though that essentially lacks is that all of these really great things that we have done with science, technology, and everything has created the promotion and kind of the development fundamentally of high efficiency in regards to the use and consumption of energy, but not actually then dimming down the light a little bit and creating, you know, a little bit more of the kind of returning to more of the rural or not such an urbanized efficient use of lighting. And so essentially you could have something that ends up being a light bulb that is 10 times brighter, but half the energy. So and unfortunately, that's to some degree what we've started to get in some of these transitions of some of the types of fixtures that we are having now in today's 2023. So next slide. So kind of some recent legislation, and this is just to kind of inform the commission specifically after, you know, taking this so that you guys are in full aware of what's been kind of going on and circulating at the state level. So in 2022, AB 2382, that was a vetoed bill that was vetoed because it lacked financial analysis, but this was really something that was geared towards a blanket requirement at the state level for all state essentially fixtures throughout the state had to essentially be retrofitted. And there really wasn't any kind of financial backing or really a tie to the state budget at the time, which was kind of a justified veto for the governor's perspective. But then AB 38 re-emerged, and that it is the exact same legislation with the nuance that it is for only new installations. So when roadways are getting brand new improvements, that those would actually go through the retrofit for what is getting deployed in the immediate areas, and then obviously creating specific exemptions for kind of public safety and utility kind of across the board. But that is still kind of in process. It didn't make it to this year's session. So kind of going to just the basics of what some of this covers is there's two kind of big components of what light is and what the dark skies component covers, which is lumens, but then also the Kelvin rating. And Kelvin rating is the one thing that I think has been kind of the thing that would kind of fell off like everyone's radar with the, with these new LED lights and these things that are obviously even in this room, it's, not the warmest of lighting. And I think, kind of if you were to drive in downtown Sunnyvale, it's probably one of the really great representations of a recent deployment of new city streetlights. Is it's very cold, it's very overly bright, oversaturated. In a downtown, they probably could have done with half the street lamps that they needed, which would have been half the energy consumption as well. But fundamentally there is the issue of obviously what lumen production there is, but then we also need to be concerned with the Kelvin rating. So typically anything 3000 or less is actually what would be considered dark sky appropriate, which is the more yellow, warmer tones. So fundamentally what light trespass is, and the biggest way that this is actually accomplished from actually creating the light bleed is by shielding of actual fixtures. And that's something that ends up getting incorporated into our local code. You see obviously frequently, especially in commercial areas, light trespass because you just have the big spotlight that, turns on and it, illuminates everything. Well, especially in residential or nearby residential, you don't necessarily need to have that type of spotlight that's totally unshielded. You need something that kind of, curtails the light to be able to actually aim it towards what's supposed to be lit, instead of creating the light trespass and bleed that ends up then taking away the night sky. These are some just basic provisions and things that I put together just from reviewing some of the local ordinances that were mentioned on the previous slide, and things that I've actually had to implement previously in other jurisdictions as well, which are kind of the typical foot candle rules for specific types of uses or zones. And then what some very simple exemptions that actually end up getting put in place, which is building addresses is kind of the biggest standard one that I think I've seen everywhere. Permitted signs, just because you don't want to create the big issue with the sign regulations. That's always a really heavily litigated one. And then obviously anything that's somewhat tied to emergency operations or first responder facilities. It's just the basics of what a foot candle is. So a foot candle is for every 1 lumen, it covers 1 square foot. And that's kind of the lighting ratio essentially. So when lumens is kind of described for whatever kind of fixture or light that is being used, that's kind of the basic kind of calculation that ends up getting computed for it. And then these are just the main principles of what actually needs to go into a dark sky ordinance, which is to light only what we need, shield light fixtures downwards, automatic timers and motion sensors. Obviously, those are some things that are already kind of in regular deployment, but some fixtures don't have a hard and fast rule for timing and lighting. Specifically things like, just like landscaping kind of lights, we probably should have a local ordinance that says, hey, outdoor light landscaping is off at midnight or whatever kind of the commission ends up kind of figuring out together. And then obviously what is going to be the light trespassing rule. And then kind of going into what I was mentioning is the light curfew is essentially window lights have to be out, in certain districts and zones, what makes the most sense, obviously. And then obviously standard exemptions, which are kind of an easier plug and play one. And so what the city council just recently gave direction on is to send this to the Environmental Commission for research and for further ordinance development. And then include an analysis regarding bird safe design. So the reason why I didn't go over this is because that was kind of a last minute zinger that got added on, and that was not requested last year, was for me to bring them back discussion about bird safe design. So that's something most specifically Cupertino did a dark sky ordinance and bird safe design, which essentially it means that there's some type of glazing or some type of feature that's on the window that essentially makes it so that wildlife doesn't fly. for all intents and purposes, fly into the window and kill themselves. Kamikaze birds, I guess. That's pretty much what this ordinance would kind of cover, and is something that the council directed us to bring to the environmental commission. Do you have any questions, thoughts?
I have a comment. So when we talk about the intent and we talk about all the reasons to do this, we should also add how it's really good for the pollinators or bad for the pollinators to have night sunlight, messes them up. Bees lose their way home, and then also there's studies that show it messes up plants' diurnal cycles. So more reasons, which I think we should mention in there as well to have that ordinance. So
I have more of a process question. So it's says, you know, work with staff basically to further research. So I know how we've done that in the past. What's gonna be the process now with kind of the way the commission is working in the future? You've obviously already done research into this and could probably even write an ordinance based on what you've already. So what role is then the commission playing in helping to develop that?
So at the last city council meeting, I gave this very similar discussion. And there is though cities that are currently considering dark sky ordinances or similar in general that have been doing kind of like the public outreach component and really kind of obtaining from folks like what is some of the basics. So, Commissioner just mentioned, about like adding in essentially the components for the benefits of, for plant species and for other types of habitat and wildlife essentially. So there's then those components. So is there anything else that really wasn't covered in this that the commission wants to be able to provide with very, kind of specific examples so that then it can be worked into, like myself and Tanya, we are totally okay with like kind of having like the meeting of the minds where, if after tonight's meeting, essentially, two of the commissioners or, one wants to kind of look at this over, a meeting and kind of report out in January. That's, essentially 2 months worth of time, that I think is like a good amount of time to have, kind of a lot of good work beyond just this kind of high level of what the ordinance should include, and kind of report back out in January of what do commissioners think we should include, after looking at, other ordinances and best practices of, what's going on in other jurisdictions. Because not every city's the same and not every, ordinance is going to look the same. So, there can be multiple different components.
So just to kind of repeat that, so you're looking for 1 or 2 commissioners to help you research and add value to the proposal you're going to make to the commission within 2 months or 3 months. Is that, did they give you a timeline?
No, so the council didn't say something about bringing something back, but I think, obviously, I know the holidays are coming up, but 2 solid months of, kind of just in, who's ever, willing to assist and look into that if it's of interest of someone specific, to be able to then provide, kind of insight and some high level recommendations and, then kind of, even as Bruno mentioned, is, bringing it back and reporting out and seeing, just, the spitballing of, the collective of, that is the benefit of having a commission of 7 is there's a lot of different angles that people kind of look at it at, as to where to go and how to address this. So yeah, I think, that would be, obviously great because, we do now have a team of 1 again for our, staff. And so I think it's fundamentally, it would be great to get some of the big kind of research and kind of the stuff for the background data and information for us to be able to, have to be able to formulate and put something together so then the commission can consider a true formal proposal to then make a recommendation formally back to council.
And also the Santa Clara Audubon Society and the Sierra Club, I think just created a model ordinance too. So it's looking at that and deconstructing it. As that would probably be one of the tasks.
So is this, the reason this is coming to the environmental commission is because of light pollution as the environmental thing? I mean, these things, the birds and the bees and all that is, add-on is that why you think the environmental commission is the, or the council thought is a good group to comment on this or help with this? Should this not also have someone say from the planning commission? If it looks at how we're,
The building.
if we're
permitting.
talking about the light trespass bit of it?
Right, so the reason why it wouldn't go to planning is because then it would or should live in the zoning code. There's a lot of implications when you put things into zoning. Berkeley is a prime example of recently putting something erroneously in a area of law that is not intended to house that. You also deal with vested rights when you put it into zoning. So if we were to put this into zoning for all extensive purposes, we would never be allowed to require someone to retrofit. They have a vested right for whatever it is now. You just determined they have a legal nonconformance. So that's actually probably the biggest thing, like kind of somewhat going to like what Berkeley violated the US Constitution actually by deploying their energy regulations. That's actually the component that the industry, that's in their back pocket still. So if the court overturns it, they're immediately going to go forward with that, because that's why you don't put things in zoning. So fundamentally, I mean, we could consult like as a, you know, as a spitball, like essentially like almost like a workshop to the planning commission, but it wouldn't go into zoning though. That's the only thing I have to be super clear about, just because we already looked at that and that was a very big implication if we did that. But yeah.
So just for clarification again, so it's for businesses, so it's commercial, it's also private homes, right? It's everything.
Yep, citywide. Yeah.
Okay, and does it include street lighting?
So that's what one of the, I mean, again, if there's a good example, I think from, you know, if commissioners look into like what other cities have been doing, that's usually one of the big standard exemptions that, you know, unless it's a kind of like with what the state, you know, why they vetoed it is unless it's a required essentially a retrofit because a pole falls down or something like that, that you wouldn't blanket go through the entire city because of how many millions of dollars that would cost for the
Right.
infrastructure. So that's usually one of the ones that ends up being a little bit, you know, different. That would also though be one of the things is, okay, so for example, is to then meet with essentially like our traffic sergeant and say, what do we need then for at nighttime? Like if we were to modify or change our street lamp like situation, can we really truly like reduce or modify our, you know, our street lights beyond what we already have now? Or, you know, and that's kind of some of that research that, you know, Tanya's not gonna have the bandwidth to do.
Yeah.
So.
And the reason why, so I think the street lighting is another one. I know I realize it's an exemptions potentially, but I just don't know what kind of street lighting we have in Los Altos, if we have the most efficient lighting right now, because that would be probably a good time to look at that as well. And also, I don't know if it's computerized. What I mean by that is that you have ways of by neighborhood or even by street or crossing or whatever from a computer at the city or whatever, city offices, reduce the lighting depending on the time of the night, really. So you can have higher lighting until, let's say, midnight, and then lower lighting after midnight. You can keep higher lighting in some areas. I don't know if we equip with that right now, but that's one way of doing it to maximize efficiency and still make sure that we take care of safety as well.
So I can definitely tell you we don't have that. That sounds very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's available. I mean, cities have it. Some cities have it.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with them. They are very nice systems, but yeah, we don't have anything that sophisticated.
I don't know what the cost would be, but I think, maybe that's something that could be reviewed and included potentially. I don't know. if that makes sense. So we leave it out and we, that's something that can be done another time.
Any other questions from any of us?
Just whether we want to form a.
Well, do we have to get public
Um,
comments first? And then sign a,
There's no public comments.
so is anybody interested in contributing to this?
We have to be a little more careful about what we jump into, because you only get one.
Well, this could be individual contributor, not
Mhm.
count toward.
I also just want to say is depending on like how much kind of like information is kind of coming back and reported back in 2 months from now. You guys you're not gonna meet with the council until later that month or in February, so. There might not be necessarily a hard and fast need to have if there's 2 of you that are kind of contributing for 2 more months on it. To make kind of like because otherwise it's gonna end up becoming a voluntold situation from the council that this is something that was just directed for the commission to undertake. And then obviously however long and fast it takes for us to knock it out would be then how, until we can get to the next priority item on the work plan.
Yeah, I think the scope is kind of clear. You said let's get it done in 2 months and report out to the commission and then go to the.
Yeah, and then
Council.
that information, me and Tanya can kind of take back and in February, really knock out a draft ordinance, bring it back to you guys, to one of the subsequent meetings. You guys say, yeah, this is kind of ideal, or no, it's not. Pete.
Just gonna say, as far as that process is concerned, that final stage where you guys have done some research, worked with staff, and then staff creates a proposed ordinance and you review it one last time before you choose to recommend or not recommend or modify and send on to council. That particular meeting is hugely important because that will be the meeting that most of the public has an opportunity to opine and ask questions and so on and so forth. So 2 major value adds by the commission. One is the understanding of the issues and the research that Nick will and staff will use to write the ordinance. And the other incredibly important value proposition is engaging the community on this. I think you will find that the community is really, really exercised about this. We got more public comment, more written public comment on this than anything else I can remember lately.
I think if there was like
Yeah, seriously.
a dozen.
Well, not counting this week. 'cause
person.
we Got a few dozen this week on something else, but
Yeah, there's like a dozen in-person comments.
Mhm.
More than a dozen
yeah,
in-person.
plus tons of written comments, plus institutional support from the Audubon Society and the League of Conservation Voters. And I was surprised at how important and urgent it is to people who are more informed on the issue than I am.
Could it also be, Nick, that this first leg of it, if you will, the research and report out at the next meeting, January, really sets the stage and answers the question whether or not you got to dig a little deeper in a couple areas or not, and whether or not there may be a need for an additional person or whatever on it for a short period of time. And I think what I also hear Pete say is that after you sort of get those ideas together, then at the meeting where you formulate and sort of present those ideas, it's inviting the public in to comment on them as well before the ordinance is finalized.
So the one thing that I will at least acknowledge is because I have looked very like in depth at what Cupertino did. But Cupertino, it took like 2 years to do what they did. Cupertino also doesn't do anything with haste when it comes to ordinance development. That's just out of transparency and just the frankness of it. But fundamentally, one of the things though that I would say is when I look at this from like a regulatory standpoint, we're talking about the dark sky ordinance and then we're talking about bird safe design, like as a separate ordinance that can go in tandem, but they're going to be housed as 2 separate ordinances. I think that also to some degree, some of the research, like the the dark sky, foot candle, light trespass, I mean, like, those are very, like, you have hard and fast, like, you know, like, what. When the lights are going off, you know what light trespass is. There's a lot more nuances to when you talk about habitat and wildlife that if there needs to be more specific regulations on that side of the ordinance, let's write that separate, like I've said, because otherwise we're just gonna sit on the dark sky for, like, let's say 6 more months or something, and then 6 months of projects get approved, and there's nothing we can do to require or regulate those. So that's why I think, you know, just fundamentally is, I think they are two separate things that, yes, they both have a place for, you know, regulation. If that's what the commission obviously comes back to finding. But I would say, I do think that's the component of this ordinance that I think you could go down a rabbit hole and be in it for a little while, personally. So.
Yeah, I like the idea of separating it. We do want to get the dark skies portion back, but the bird safe component might take longer to really work through.
Everybody.
Nobody wants to jump in?
This was not good for me. There's so many thoughts that I want to share in terms of and get clarification on whether you're also looking for someone to figure out what is the education component to actually get it implemented, at least anecdotally, hearing from somebody in Portola Valley that they're like the dark sky there is not being enforced or not, not being necessarily followed. So feels like that's a huge component, is how you actually get the public to do this voluntarily. And it sounds like a lot of your focus is too is just getting the building code, or not building code, but I mean new buildings figured out so that this is already in place, for like the shields are put in place whenever a new building's put in place. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they did mention at the council meeting that a lot of these are complaint based.
Mhm.
So that's how
Yeah.
it would be enforced for a while.
Yeah, a lot of questions about it. Yeah, how you confront somebody about this, and if just compared to other like stuff like gas leaf blower, like that if that would come at a cost to that monitoring and that enforcement. So I feel like that would be part of the research as well potentially. And then the other thought in the back of my brain is do we also have to decentivize nighttime driving to actually see an effect with this? And that just feels like a whole other. But just, and then and also just another thing that the research would have to do then is say, what is that level of light that if every city around us would eventually allow us to see the stars essentially, right? So I don't know. It just feels.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah. But that's what we said was the express goal, right?
Seeing the stars is never gonna happen. That's just not possible. Right? If you want dark skies for celestial viewing, you go up to the mountains where you're 250 miles from a city. You're not gonna have, I mean, this is more about birds, it's more about human circadian rhythms, energy consumption. There are a host of other things that are associated with what we're calling a dark sky ordinance. And I believe dark sky is a little bit of a misnomer, because when I think of dark sky, I think of, there's a dark sky festival that I go up to in the mountains, and hundreds of people set up telescopes and watch, the Leonid meteors or what have you. And that's never going to happen anywhere near population centers. There's just way too much ambient light for that. That's not really what we're trying to accomplish.
That's just, there's a tension between how we introduced it and all of these other benefits that need to be in that ordinance. So that
Kind of an
people really
educational
understand.
component,
Yeah.
right? As we do the community outreach, we need to make sure that the value proposition is articulated in a pretty easy way. A couple of half a dozen bullet points at the most for what we're trying to accomplish.
I think that's part of the task, is to explore all these things, to brainstorm all these things and
Scope it.
and and then zoom into it. Because as you'll do this when we're doing this as staff, it's like there's all these things and we're you know, going ping ponging from everything and looking at all the information, and then we have to kind of like, okay, this is what we can do and this is how we can do it. So that's kind of what we're asking.
And there's other
Commission to do.
jurisdictions nearby that are implementing ordinances that will give us
Yeah, I can
a
start with,
pretty, I mean, we don't have to totally reinvent the wheel. We can kind of look at what our neighbors have done and
yeah. A good start would be to watch the council meeting, and there's a lot of it, direction in there. And I can send you my notes from it too.
it's a short section. You don't have to watch that much.
Yeah.
What's the date of the council meeting?
It's the 24th.
It took us a few minutes to say, I think.
Are you volunteering?
Commission needs to-
I'm volunteering for myself to go watch the meeting. Timings, yeah, it's tough for me as well. but
No, I
everyone
think
else
it is a
doing
tough
it.
time of year, but I think it
Yeah.
does make sense for us. Again, I think
Yeah.
it's a one-person gig at first. Just to help the staff scope it. But it would be good to have a volunteer. If anybody has a specific interest in dark skies or knows something about dark skies. No,
So a month later, I'd be volunteering myself, but this next month, there's no way, unfortunately.
Yeah, I cannot do that for this 2 months. I have a lot already.
well, then I will, I'll take the volunteer. I'll take it up. And we'll
Oh.
shoot for getting something done
Would it
and,
be easier for two people to do it then? If it's.
Yeah, I think that to scope out the issue is fine. I can assist in that, or I can wait till you have to get some things scoped out.
yeah, why don't we scope it out and then if I need to, I'll ping you. But at least we'll get it started, get it scoped out, try to fast track it and, try to get something on the table by, is there a meeting in December or?
No,
That's the quiet month. So, yeah, we should shoot for getting something in January.
I don't want to put you out there all by yourself, so if you want me, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll get started and, yeah, maybe I'll.
I think the materials that
Send me
came
my
in
notes.
via.
Yeah,
public
so please
comment
send me your
at the
notes and we'll-
Council meeting would be a great place to
Scattered,
start.
but-
There were some wonderful letters that were really well researched and, had a lot of information. I think the League of Conservation Voters, I might be misremembering, but there's certainly several letters that were really good starts for the information.
All right, well, great. So, we move on to the next topic.
And. All right, so I think the goal is, did everyone get a chance to watch the recording that I sent out? For some background, or Commissioner Liu, do you want to provide some background real quick?
Yeah, our mayor, not the Caribbean, I'm sorry, I think it's, Figor, had a meeting with, Joe Samadia on the details, on the Lehigh plans. And, his visions and, what near-term accomplishment is and what the long-term work that still need to happen. And then I think there's a lot of good information on Town Crier article. I think I asked Tanya to share that with people, probably. Yeah, I asked for PDF from the editor. He never get it to me, I watched the recording. I guess it's really at a distance, so it's not a very good focused one. It's kind of long, a little bit over an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that since we covered this in August meeting, that this actually happened in early August. There is a by supervisors meeting and a unanimous support of cease the quarry and cement production, and then at least Joseph Meeting was able to get a binding agreement from the parent company. And that's just step one. They are still doing a lot of rock shipping out, delivery business. You see this huge truck still running on the Stevens Creek Canyon Road, and it's just near south side of the city. So I think the pollution, we can say, the pollution from the cement production itself, is gonna ease up. But I think the dust pollution, the air, and some of the water was still there for, years. And we as a, neighboring city, I think we feel, maybe we try to find a way, what concretely that we can to help them. And Joe is not going to be in his capacity beyond the end of the next year. He's already maxed out 3 terms as a county supervisor, but he is the most instrumental and get a lot done during the last 10 years. Actually, yeah, so I feel we should support and really applaud to his effort. But also really is looking into future, now and the future, what we can do to help them.
Thank you for providing that overview. So I think we just kind of, the goal of what we want to do today is make sure that we've added everything we want to add in this letter, that everyone has a chance to comment and decide what the next steps would be. So we don't really want to pick apart the letter. We just want to make sure it has important key facts and or key asks for next steps in it.
Can I ask a question? I just see the letter is from the Los Altos City Council and the Los Altos Environmental Commission. So what's the process? We draft the letter, it goes to the council says okay, and it's signed by the mayor and the chair of the commission?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what our plan is.
So today we're gonna approve the letter, vote on it, and then send it to the commission effectively.
To the council.
Sorry, to
To the
the
council.
council.
Would we
Yeah.
do that through does the commission need to go to council to
No,
present
but you
this?
do need to vote on it.
Yes, okay.
If you vote to send it to council, then council will look at it, decide whether or not council wants to sign the letter. I personally, I tend to be supportive. So I'm hopeful that other council members will also be.
Okay. Does anyone want to add, remove? Anything?
Council may decide to wordsmith it from. the-
Oh, yeah, we'll wordsmith it. We'll wordsmith it.
I'm sure council will want to modify some stuff. Just a question, actually. You mentioned in the first paragraph, you talk about monitoring, negotiating, and obtaining some commitments from the high to see cement production operation. That's a done deal, right?
Yeah, I think the
It's-
binding agreement has been obtained.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
and then because you mentioned afterwards at the end of that paragraph, we appreciate the tremendous efforts you and your team has taken in the past decade, and then you third bullet point is for reaching a binding agreement to put a stop on cement production operations. So I think maybe the first paragraph of the letter should be focusing on what's left to do. So what's left to do is to develop an acceptable restoration plan, which is critical and it's going to take many, many years. But I think also what's left to do is that the plant is still operating, even though it's not making cement anymore, it's shipping. It's used as just, it's basically shipping stuff. It's a kind of like a warehouse in some ways, right? And they bring products in, ship product out, right?
Right.
They're still quarrying lime, I believe.
Yeah.
The kiln that makes the cement is decommissioned,
That's right.
Yeah.
That one
Yeah.
is stopped.
but they're still
Correct.
basically digging their
Yeah.
hole.
No more expanding what the quarry, but what we really want is the quarry complete stop. So that still need to be worked
Did,
out.
did
I
you
would like to-
discuss
yeah.
did you discuss the use of on-site materials versus bringing new material in? Because the company submitted a plan to bring in outside material to fill the hole.
Yeah.
It was a big controversy, and
Right,
most people think, they should first use what's on site.
yeah. I think that all that detail needs to be worked out.
Yeah, so
I
I'm
think
wondering,
those were the
is
big
the intent
area.
of this letter just to say,
We support
thank you, you've done a great job on these things and we want to support you in these next steps that have to happen? Or is it to try and really detail exactly what we, we as a city think
Yeah.
needs to happen? Those are two
If we
different
do
things.
that, then it's gonna be a
That's what I'm saying. So
long thing, right?
I think maybe just, it's got the basic structure. We're saying
Yeah,
what your work is great and we want to support you. It's not done. We want to continue to support you and pretty much whoever your successor is and or.
You
or
may
that-
choose to add it here, and if you don't, I would probably recommend it once it comes to us, but I will want to point out that the creek that flows out of the quarry flows right through our town. And that's why we have a vested interest in this.
Sure, yeah, I mean, yeah, and
It's
I'm
a
not
Novi
sure,
Creek that flows right through, it, right out of the quarry. I believe.
part of the
permanent.
audience,
Clemente Creek, but there's
permanent.
two creeks that come out of that watershed.
I'm not sure part of the audience is for the next supervisor, but so that I'm curious as to why we're talking about whoever comes next. I mean, this is, the audience really is, from my perspective, would be supervisor submitting. And I'm not sure that it's going to be passed on to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
we read
Well,
the
we
next letter
want-
already.
I guess we want to keep what he has been doing because we don't know, the next supervisor, what this person, what his or her position is gonna be on this.
Right, I
But
know.
Joe is the one.
I know, but my point is.
Another letter. from
Yeah,
us
that's
at
what I'm
that
saying.
point.
The
Yeah.
audience for this is supervisor submitting and then.
True, that's
I'm
true.
not gonna, I wouldn't think that it's going to then get passed on to. I won't name who I want to be supervisor.
So I,
Yeah, so
I
do
would
we,
have to Keep it
do-
simple.
yeah, I think that's right. We keep it simple and also because I think there's so many things you could talk about. It would
Yeah.
we get down in the weeds too quickly. So keep it simple. And I don't know if we. need
can I
to-
suggest one? You can decide whether you want this or not, but so going back to the first paragraph and my original comment, instead of to cease cement production operation, I would say to cease remaining production operation at the plant or remaining operation at the plant and to develop an acceptable restoration plan. Because it's not about cement production anymore. It's about still operating the plant and the reclamation plan. That's all. That's the only comment I would have and the only change I would suggest on the letter.
Yeah, that's.
Quarry, you say quarrying operation is actually dig. It's to dig those limestone, yeah.
Do we want to add in the line, that Councilmember he put suggested?
Yeah. I noted that.
That way there's less discussion, one less thing to discuss at the council meeting.
So is this something, since you drafted a letter, you'd like to
Okay.
fix up or?
Yeah.
Do we need to vote to approve this?
Yes, yeah.
I move that we approve sending this letter on to council with the suggested amendments.
Okay, is everyone in favor of that?
Yes.
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 Motion passes. All right,
I'll make sure the next supervisor has it on her agenda as well.
I guess you can say her.
There is a,
Let them know.
no, there's a
There.
third candidate who is,
Okay.
Yeah, got a strong support, yeah, I know.
the third candidate, the latest candidate, the man.
All right, off topic.
Next topic.
Sorry, Michael.
the website.
Okay. So there's some updates. This was suggested by Chair Delavue. And I posted the updates that he provided in the staff report. And the intent here is to make sure the commission is okay with these updates and to see if there are any additions. And so if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I can. So, we worked on this about a year ago. So I looked at what we had and tried to look for potential changes and modifications. And this is what I found. There were some things that had to be modified. I also found things that needed to be added to the website, which are new and have been clarified specifically with regards to the IRA. So this is what this is about. And these are the modifications I would suggest for the website to be done as quickly as possible. The only thing, Tanya, that I would like to change on what you sent is that in the residential solar resource page, the first paragraph, the last sentence should be kept in the new language.
Okay.
In other words, as a result, the cost of installing, etc., should be also the last sentence of the new paragraph.
Okay.
So is this something that every time we want to change the actual details of the information on the website, the commission needs to review it? In the past, it's just been like changing content overall, but not like, okay, we're just updating something. I don't know.
So I'm gonna somewhat interject. You guys are the only commission that is directing or requesting to direct staff to change things to the website. So I think we're gonna need to like figure out a way to streamline this a little bit, because like so in every jurisdiction I've worked in the state of California, I've never had a commission do this. So we won't be bringing this back ever again, because this is not appropriate to be talking about at a commission level meeting. I mean, an email to staff being like, hey, can we put some information about this is totally fine, but that's in individual contributing capacities. Because website content is at the discretion of the city manager and their staff, not at the request of the commissions. So I do just have to somewhat bring that up. I can't control what is being agendized always, but yeah, we will have to streamline kind of how you guys can just make requests, and if it's appropriate and consistent with the city website policy that's established, then we'll do so.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
And it's so appropriate for just us to say something. Oh, there's new rebates. Can you
Yep.
please look into that and maybe
Yep.
add resources? But
Yeah, but honestly, the best thing to do is like, hey, like if you guys say, yep, hey, there's a bunch of resources that just got posted, but then literally just shooting her a quick email so that she kind of has the physical, kind of electronic reminder. That's the best thing for us, more so than, just the conversation. But yeah, I mean, these are all, consistent and fine. It's just that this is a lot for us to have to kind of wordsmith and do.
We should the public email if they have suggestions.
I'm sorry.
We should the public email if they have suggestions for what could be updated on the website.
So depending on the topic,
Yeah.
there should be essentially somewhat of a liaison kind of contact on almost the majority of kind of subsections in the website. Yeah.
Would the interface be the PIO?
Yeah, for the majority of stuff, but so like my assistant updates, essentially anything and everything for development services. So if there's things that are inconsistent, I shoot her off stuff all the time. So it kind of just depends. There's kind of multiple web hosts and masters, and we are going to be bringing someone on specifically for website stuff and the community engagement stuff as the replacement to the public information coordinator that left earlier this year. So kind of a lot of moving parts with the website.
And to add to that, normally this would be on like under our sustainability page or something like that, which we're going to be moving towards. So this information wouldn't also be on the Environmental Commission webpage.
So given that background, do we want to we need to vote on this, or can we
No, I think, yeah,
Staff,
We're done.
no, staff, yeah, staff will just accept
Okay.
this and we'll put on there what is.
Excellent.
appropriate.
Another question, I think, and I don't wanna get too much into the detail, but isn't there new state laws too that are changing all these things again? That the state with rebates and incentives to put in heat pumps and
Well,
things like
I think
changing it all
the
again.
fact is this will change a lot.
Right.
And I don't know how we'll keep up.
yeah.
And so I think, I
think
don't want to get into a big
Goods.
discussion, but there's probably third parties that can provide us the information.
Yeah, I think pointing to the tools. that
Pointing to
can-
the tools rather than
Yeah.
the numbers.
Right.
Yeah, because there's whole companies that can't even keep up to date on all the, especially the new stuff that's been passed, both in California and at the federal level and all the income levels and everything else. So
Yeah, it's pretty.
I think it's
complicated.
a real tough task for anybody to keep track of that and be accurate in time. So I think, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what the solution is that, but I do know there are third parties that you can sign up with. I don't
Gen
know.
AI?
Yeah, so, I mean, that's probably a separate topic. I mean, for you guys to talk about and tee up if you need help thinking about that. But I don't think there's any way to keep up to date on all the different incentives at this point.
Yeah, I mean, rebates evolve. I mean, it's a part of a component of state and federal annual budgets. So it's constantly evolving.
Do we have a disclaimer on a website if somebody says, oh, I was expecting a $1,000 rebate based on what you had on your website? Now will they get informed? We haven't
So
seen
I
it.
would have to look at exactly what's on our website, but yeah, we generally put disclaimers for certain things. It's also one of the reasons why jurisdictions don't really kind of go down the rabbit hole of advertising for certain things. That's why development services, we do not provide a list of preferred vendors or anything like that, even a list of 100. Because then there's gonna be the one person that says, hey, why didn't you put me on that list after I emailed you? So, stuff like that.
Yeah, and it does say on the webpage that if there's any questions or suggestions about the page to email the environmental commission email, just to answer your question. So we have to update that.
Okay. Commissioner reports from council meetings?
Yep.
Staff updates.
Oh, did we, oh, sorry, city staff updates.
It's okay. I don't have too many, but okay, so just, I think I've been talking about the SVCE fleet technical assistance and just to provide a little more detail on what that actually is. So basically, it's a program to provide us with a phase out schedule to replace all city owned fleet vehicles, which is a goal in our cap. And so what we're working with SVCE's consultant is, we've provided them information on relevant vehicle data that they've used to create this analysis and strategic plan, basically. And then they're also, so they're basically coming up with that phase out based on our 2030 goal in the cap, as well as CARB's advanced fleet regulations to make sure that, you know, we're in compliance as a city for that. And then they're also doing determining charging infrastructure needs. And so this will give us a basis to move forward with identifying funding, which they'll also help us with. But again, like we were just talking about, those rebates are going to change by the time they're done. But it's also going to be a tool that we can take to council and say, like, this is what we need to do. We need to allocate funding some way or another in addition to identifying grants and so on and so forth. This isn't necessarily something that the commission would weigh in on because it's basically us providing the consultant information and them providing us the plan that we then take to council. But once we do have a more fleshed out plan, we can kind of give a high level overview on what that is. And so we're also continuing to work on the EV fair, so the 2024 Destination Electric, and we have the same Planning Committee, and Commissioner Van Rees is also still on that. And it'll follow a similar model to what we did last year, maybe adding more space and more booths and some other components that we're still figuring out. Again, that is something we can report out on when there's more detail. I think we got a lot of the feedback in at the end of the last event. So again, not much more the commission needs to weigh in on there, but we can provide updates if we have substantial ones going forward. And then yeah, I think that's all my major updates. Is there anything you want to?
No, the only other thing is essentially because the council meeting takes place tomorrow, where the official report out is that there is no more public comment via Zoom after tomorrow's council meeting. So it's already on the agenda, but that has been suspended until May of 2024, given the current circumstances with a variety of anti-Semitic Zoom bombings that have been taking place in the immediate Bay Area. So it's out of an abundance of caution for commissions, council, and staff. So we won't be asking for public comment anymore unless they're in the chambers.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you.
Are we able to ask for dates? I mean, I was curious about what the status of the tree protection ordinance is.
Yeah, we're gonna be taking that to council November 28th.
I guess a similar thing, Nick, you would send out a note that we're working on a grant for, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the mayor had gotten either forwarded or discovered it on her own regarding a grant that won, I think it was like number 2 of the list of 4 in the rankings of what was like a priority for a $50,000 grant for an urban forest master plan. And so we quickly kind of pivoted when we were kind of in the in-between of potentially doing a special meeting last month, and was able to get that out, and it was due by the end of October, right? Yeah, so that's actually already in, so hopefully we'll hear by the end of the year, and that would be something super successful to be able to potentially last minute revisit what we're gonna put forward for the work plan so that we can say, you know, an allocation of, you know, this, you know, obviously unprojected or forecasted dollar figure to be able to put towards that, since it is a pretty costly endeavor to, you know, bring in the outside consultation for that. So yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. So we're kind of in the waiting in between. So but I will say, at least, you know, whoever kind of did some of the initial work where is it Davy, right? Group, some of their initial cost proposal, even though it's not something that we can extract and just sole source, it provided us some really good, you know, information that we were able to put in, where I doubt if anybody else is probably, you know, putting in for an urban forest master plan probably has that level of some of the information and background of stuff that we did have. So, I mean, if we don't get it, it's probably going to go to something very specific, like for like wildfire interface, like kind of like planning. That always kind of somewhat takes priority. So, you know, if we don't, no, that's a bummer, but I do think obviously that information really, I think, makes us kind of pretty competitive in the process, in my opinion. So
Did you mention our urban wildland interface along 280?
yeah, no, we did. It's just there's some
places
people that
that
are gonna be, you know, like the Hills, for example, they're gonna, if they put in for the same thing, they would
They would have a
probably
more acute need. than
yeah, the more acute basis for kind of a big grant. So fingers crossed.
And yeah, also that reminds me, we're still obviously working on the disposable foodware ordinance as well. Yeah, so. Questions, update, requests?
Thank you. Oh, did you attend some council meetings?
Attended the October 10th meeting, so I can report out a few things there. Quickly, Compassion Week was organized. Commissioner Hester was there to accept that or take a photo for that, as well as Hispanic Heritage Month. I was recognized. Some commissioners were sworn in. One of the big discussions was special events revision, which basically was to add language that events that affected traffic or would impede sidewalks be included that weren't previously included. And so that was eventually settled on, and there's some more details about block parties are not part of that, they're separate, but I don't need to get into that really. The point is they'll capture more events, and it's supposed to be a net neutral financial change. Person was added to Parks Commission. They expressed approval of the Stanford community update in the end. Yeah, there was an objection, but ultimately city will avoid uncontrollable building standards by moving forward with their housing element piece. Yeah, I guess the one other thing to say there is new standards for the Rancho Shopping Center to be mixed use, commercial and residential. That's part of the housing element. I'm definitely oversimplifying it, but that's some basics. One little fun thing at the end, Councilmember Flagger mentioned that she's exploring a sister city ship. Councilmember Liang wants a compassion training event for council and public as well. Did you want to clarify anything I said there?
No,
Okay.
it's just, the housing element, is in kind of full effect and full force with, implementation. And so, what, Carl's kind of talking about is the, first round of big, implementation measures, which was to modify building heights in all of the mixed use zones to remove an FAR limitation that was, put on Rancho Shopping Center and Woodland Plaza just over 30 years ago. Reducing and eliminating the conditional use requirement for residential mixed use and multifamily. That's now data practice, and amend permit requirements, modify building standards in the R3 zones. And that was all passed, and so that is now actually operative. And then tomorrow we go forward with batch number 2, which is to modify the zoning at the Village Court Shopping Center to upzone the CT zoning district, to rezone the OA district to allow for mixed use and residential, and anything else that people are going to be very upset at me for. So it's just the housing element, just doing what it already says. So
Which one is the Village Court?
so it's our side of El Camino opposite of Chef Chu.
Okay.
So, and for all extensive purposes, just so you guys know, I mean, as information in the community is, it has split zoning right now, which is super, like uncommon considering that should have cleaned up that area of the zoning. And it actually continued to perpetuate the split zoning. So essentially half the lot is zoned R110 and the other half is zoned CT. And so it's just to bring the entire lot into consistent zoning. It was actually something that we identified 10 years ago in a 5th cycle housing element. So there's literally nothing we could do to not do essentially what we said we were going to do a decade ago. And so there's just a lot of misconceptions about that specific site with a very small group of residents in that immediate area, unfortunately. So.
Were there any other updates?
Covered everything pertinent on that one, but
I was on the 24th, October 24th, and we've covered most of that here. I think the things that occurred, one is there was some recognition of past commissioners. Then there was a lot of discussion on the dark sky ordinance, which we went through a lot of that here. And there was just a little bit of discussion. I think you also brought up the speed on the zoning. That was about it, or the housing. So covered You covered all of the meeting.
And was that the universe of updates? Should we assign somebody for the rest of November, 11-14? Anybody want to take?
I can do 28.
You want to do the 28th?
I'll do the 14th.
Thank you very much.
Tomorrow's only got 5 items on the agenda.
Goes wisely.
I
Tom,
don't the size of the item.
Yeah, yes, Bruno?
Yeah, no, I think there is a council meeting in December too, and since we're not going to have a meeting in December, you probably want to assign people to the remaining council meetings until mid-January.
Good point. I thought there were no meetings in December, but is that just the commissions, I guess, right?
Yeah, only us.
Just us, okay. Yeah, so do you know what meetings are in December?
So
One
you guys would
second.
only need to account for, there's 2 technically, is December 12th. So December 5th is just a reorg of the council.
The 12, anybody want to take 12? You can always watch the video at 1.5 speed.
It looks like it on the plane. Sorry.
I'll take
Love
12.
to, but.
I'll take 12.
Would it be helpful to start doing like a rotation on?
You know, that would
Please.
probably be a good idea. Just we can start it alphabetically, actually, or something like that, and just march through it.
So what we could also recommend, or what I would recommend potentially doing is, so when we bring back the first meeting in January, we will be adopting the commission calendar for the rest of the year, just so that everyone's aware. Because if it does fall, if for some reason a regular commission meeting falls on like a city holiday or something, the meeting is canceled, and then any special meetings is at the discretion of the director and staff, not at the commission, just because of specific other moving targets with timelines and deadlines for staff. So if at that point, then you guys can kind of also look at it and say, okay, yes, I can schedule myself 4 months in advance, and I'll take, some of those, and it kind of marries up with, kind of commissioner assignments as well for the council at the same time. It's a good way to usually do it. You guys want to try it that way?
Well, I'm not trying to understand what you were suggesting.
So when we adopt the commission calendar,
Yeah.
we will also be able to bring you guys the council calendar, so you guys can kind of know.
Because there's no council calendar for next year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially until December, and then we'll have it, and then you guys can kind of see it, and then kind of loosely somewhat talk about it, maybe
Yeah, I
a few
think-
months in advance.
Well, I think what we could do is just say, just do alphabetically, just assign people. If they need to
Yeah.
switch with somebody, that's up to them.
Yeah.
Because then we don't have to discuss it every time for
Right.
10 minutes.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. That's up to you guys.
I'd prefer to do it that way. Just Tanya Venner, just start at the
Yeah.
top and say Carl goes first, and then just walk down the list. First name alphabetically.
I think what we can do is you can put that together on, match them up with the council calendar, and we'll just give them as an informational item at the next meeting. So then you guys know, and then if you can't attend, it's up to you to
Yeah.
find your replacement.
So,
I mean, but the fact that you can just listen to a recording
Yes.
and make notes. It's a big deal to.
okay. Future agenda items?
Before we move
Oh,
on to
yes.
that, sorry, I just want to, there was an update I also wanted to share that we're working on. SVCE just came out with rebates for municipal equipment, that gas equipment being changed to electric, so we kind of jumped on that, and we're trying to see what what equipment can be changed over to electric right now. So that's another thing we're working on that I wanted to share with everyone. It kind of ties into one of the work plan items, or it ties. Yeah, but we can't guarantee, it's dependent on, how much it's gonna cost to get a contractor to install, because that would have to come from our side. The funds are just for the equipment and some of the infrastructure costs. So we're kind of weighing all these things out, working with the other department that, has purview over this and so don't want to get anyone too excited, but we're taking the initial steps on doing that. So I just wanted to share that. Sorry. Yep. Turn it back to you.
Okay, so I think we have 4 potential, I'm not sure how all these got here.
So the first two, 1 and 2 have already been on there. We already voted on those and
So those are definite?
those have been on there for a while, yeah. And then the 3 and 4 are new, so a commissioner had brought that to me. So we need, if everyone agrees that they should be brought back to another meeting, then we need to vote on these 2 items.
So vote on 3 and 4, but on 1 and 2, do we have a meeting where those will be on the agenda?
Not yet, but they can be on an agenda.
Okay.
Because we've already voted on them.
So I'll talk with you on those individually.
Mhm. And I think Commissioner Delview has more information on those too.
Yes,
So-
no, and Bruno, yeah.
And I don't know, does anyone want us to go over what 3 and 4 would be about, or is everyone good on that?
Like there's something about 3, so.
Sorry?
Yeah, I don't know what 3 is about particularly.
Okay, I'll pass that over to Commissioner Delview who suggested this, number 3.
Number 3, the parking management plan. So,
If you could briefly just,
yeah, so I mean, there is a process that started with the city. A consultant has been hired, I believe. I don't know if it's been selected already, but I think it's in the process of being selected for developing a parking management plan for downtown. As you probably remember, we have 2 actions in the CAP under transportation, which has to do with parking management, specifically in commercial area, including downtown. So I think it would be good for the commission to know what's going on, and I'm hoping that the commission will be involved in the discussions to come up with that plan, because it's extremely important to, for the CAP. And it's, as I just said, 2 actions under the transportation in the CAP. So that's what it is about. So the reason why I suggested we put it on the agenda is because I think it would be good for us to get an update on where the city stands on this and what the process would be.
So this would be an informational item.
I believe so, yeah.
I think if it's, I didn't realize there were 2 actions in the CAP related to parking management. So given the fact there are, I think that would be worth hearing about. I don't, I mean, it's just at a high level, I think if it's related to the CAP, it's fine for an agenda. That's how I feel. But I want to make sure it's tied to the CAP explicitly. If it's not tied to the CAP explicitly, I would.
So I'm gonna interject. So I'm the one that ended up doing it. So it's actually, so there's a lot of things in the CAP. So I mean, we have to at least acknowledge that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Environmental Commission is the people that are the ones that are carrying it out. I'm happy to bring it as an informational item. However, I will be very firm unless the council requires a different direction, which would then take an additional appropriation of city funds. We are not scoped to bring this to the Environmental Commission. And it's already going to cost $250,000 for this parking plan that has been going on since 1987. So it's something that has to get completed by December of 2024. We are tied by the housing element that's actually initiating this. There's components and benefits that is in the CAP that me and Tanya have discussed, but I mean, this is literally talking about how we're going to park downtown. There's not really going to be a component of it that talks about EV deployments and things like that. That would be the added benefit of once we have this plan, where can we also then incorporate and include EV and other things that are kind of more so tied to the implementation from the CAP, that the component that's in the CAP about parking management is kind of like an overarching kind of bullet point, essentially. There's not much else in it other than do a parking management plan citywide. It's pretty much what it says.
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be useful for the Environmental Commission to hear what the city's plans are before they're maybe very far along, not that, you know, we would want to interfere. But one of the things, a couple of things in the cap is also that to make sure that major developments that the city undertakes are, take the cap in mind. So I think we'd want to, being the people that know what's in the cap most closely, I think it might be good to just kind of look at it and take that as information, and then we can decide if it makes sense to, you know, go any further with how the city's plan aligns with the cap that the city, you know, also adopted. So I feel like it'd be good for us to know what's going on. That's my opinion.
I would err on the side of unless there's explicitly something that the commission can provide value on. If it's a plan that is going to go forward, that there's not, you know, a clear area that we are going to provide input and value to, then I would say it's would not be a priority for me, for the commission to hear about.
Yeah, and I think what I heard from Nick is he doesn't, staff doesn't want input from us on some of the things yet. And so that's pretty important, I think. It sounds like it is just a parking plan. But as well, I think if any of us want to get information, I'm sure it's going to be presented at a council meeting and.
It is, it has a very robust component of public outreach and public participation, so. The capacity of the environmental commissioners can be to participate, as I would encourage all of them to. Fundamentally, I mean, I also know the Complete Streets Commission would also love to get their hands on this. They're not going to, so I mean, it's more right for them than maybe for you. So I mean, if at that, and this then ends up having to go to the planning commission. So that's the kind of the narrative they have to somewhat, I mean, at least be honest and full trend. I mean, we're talking right now is 3 commissions to do one parking strategy plan. And we just kicked off, I mean, I literally just walked around downtown last Tuesday with a consultant for the first time ever, boots on the ground. There's nothing to even talk about with what they're going to be doing. They have to do a full market analysis and kind of capacity study just to even start the process. And then hopefully in January, kind of return with some initial kind of findings to be able to somewhat say, hey, this is how we're scoped, this is what we're actually going to do. And thankfully, we're going to be in the busiest time for downtown that they're going to be looking at parking capacity at the busiest time. So it's actually going to be the worst case scenario of whatever parking demand it ends up being. But this is really talking about parking demand. It's not really some of the nuances to certain things where, I mean, in full transparency, like I said, I'm not kidding. There's literally an entire webpage on our website. This has been going on since 1987. And that's just the ones that have been published on the website. It's actually been going on since the 70s. And it keeps on trying to get, and then we're not really kind of getting anywhere with like, because we're not letting the consultants do and kind of, you know, at the end of it, we should then have kind of the disclosure of this is our document, this is our plan. Provide comments on it when it's an admin draft, not the scoping for the consultant.
Nick, when do you think there's gonna be a draft? An admin draft? We're still talking months and months, right?
I mean, we're talking about late spring at the earliest.
It seems to me perfectly appropriate to have an information item where staff says, hey, this is what the consultants did. And then this commission has an opportunity to weigh in and say, oh, that's all fine and good, but boy, it certainly doesn't comport with the cap, or yeah, that comports with the cap, and we're happy that the parking study recommends bike corrals and yada yada.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of, at least what I was suggesting, is that at a point, and when we put something on a future agenda item, doesn't have to be next, whatever time frame, it's when it's appropriate. And it makes sense to do it based on what where the city's at.
yeah.
So that's, I mean, that's kind of, I think, what I was suggesting. That makes sense to have as a future, just mid to distant future item. But,
As the consultants do their work, thinking back to the cap, I was on the Parks Commission, but I participated with the consultants when they assembled the, group of community representatives. You know, so there will be probably opportunities just to engage in the process once the consultants are running their public outreach and so forth. But I don't think that that's necessarily an agenda item for the commission. The way we did it with the CAP, I was just sort of the designated liaison to meet on the, the Friday sessions where there was a big conference call about early on in the process when they were sort of scoping out the work. So keep that in mind, and maybe somebody ends up being the representative from the Environmental Commission to sit in on some of those meetings, and who knows, we may have a representative from Complete Streets sit on the meetings and what have you, but it doesn't seem like agendized work for the commission. It seems more like liaising and making sure that that your eyeballs are on the final product before it gets moved up to council. Does that make sense, Nick?
So where did we end up there? We are going to suggest, which I think makes sense, that Nick invites a liaison from the Environmental Commission to participate in the meetings. And that we agendize it, or that we do not, instead of agendizing it, we just have a liaison who can tee it up here if we do need to agendize, put it on the agenda. That makes sense?
Well, if you have a liaison, you're gonna want the liaison to report at the meeting anyway, so it's gonna be agendized no matter what. So I think there are two different ways of doing it, right? So you have this way, you assign a liaison to make sure that the commission is represented by someone during the public outreach. And the other way is to say, well, public outreach, we are a public forum, and we represent the residents, at least a subset of residents with a specific expertise. It makes sense for us to, as a commission, take a look at and get an update on what's going on with the parking management plan. So I think you have to, as a commission, we have to decide what we want to do. But I think either way, I think makes sense. That's my opinion.
Have you moved forward?
Yeah, I think we need to vote on something quickly.
I think what I heard, it was an informational item until there may be an appropriate time for input from the issues related to the environmental cap plan. So that's what I sort of heard out of the discussion.
I think you can do both too. You can still have an informational item at a commission meeting, and you can still have a liaisons to go to participate in public outreach. It's up to you to decide. I mean, it's up to the commission to decide what they want to do.
So the only thing that I am gonna somewhat at least preface is, so the program that we're talking about is 1.1C, develop and implement a new parking management plan that supports the VMT reduction. There's not gonna be any analysis for VMT reduction as a part of this plan. So that it's partly, I'm more so just disclosing, I don't want the commission to think like there's gonna be, I mean, that's a huge analysis that would be a part of this, that the consultant wasn't scoped for that. This is literally talking about, I mean, I think you guys are gonna be really disappointed with what is being studied here. We're talking about how many parking stalls there are in downtown.
Yeah. Is
And
there
how
enough
many,
parking for the
and how
library?
many parking stalls we might need, and how much we're gonna charge for like development to get to walk away from not building parking. That's what we're talking about, and then potentially the need for a parking garage.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's no potential for things like alternatives to, shuttles to get people downtown, or more bike parking, or if that's not in the scope of it, I for one would say, I don't think this is something that we need to agenda.
It's not, and the consultant's also not like geared to do that type of analysis. That would go to a totally different firm for this. So that's partly, I just don't want the community or the commissions to be really disappointed with, I mean, it was very intentional with why we picked this firm, was to be able to finish out what's been going on for the last several years. So, I mean, I'm happy to bring back an informational item when the consultant has like essentially an admin draft for me to be able to share what we're doing. But again, as a
Okay.
primer, this
Why don't
is
we,
what we
why
are.
don't we do that, or let's vote on doing that, because then at least give us comfort that in fact it is just where we're painting lines and how many lines we're painting type thing.
Right.
And then if it expands, then we'll be in the loop.
Mhm.
So yeah, anybody want to make a motion to vote on
Well,
that?
we can vote on both of them at the end if.
Okay, okay, got
if
it.
Sounds like everyone's on board with what was
Okay.
just said.
So the next one is,
The cafe,
The
which
cafe.
Commissioner Whedon has brought.
I think I brought that forward just as an informational item to see what's developing on there, because I think really, again, I don't think this commission has an interest in getting involved in a contract or anything. I think it's more, are they doing things sustainably? Are they presenting our community in a sustainable and reusable and compostable products type thing? So it's more informational than anything else.
Yeah, so I mean, we would have to reach out to Manny Hernandez and see if he can send someone to provide you guys with just an informational update. I mean, based on what you're even kind of saying, I mean, just so you understand, so I had Tanya actually draft essentially a citywide policy that Gabe signed off on about a week and a half ago, which is about that if anybody is operating in city facilities or staff is ordering, supplying anything, everything has to essentially adhere to what we can control right now, which is everything that's in the cap. So it's gonna be not just compostable things that actually can't get composted because of the landfill that they're going to right now. So essentially everything moving forward, once supplies is burned out of, all the stuff that we have, or people at city facilities that are vendors, things of that nature. That's a city policy that is already now in effect fully. Because me and Tanya observed something fairly recently and we're like, that's not in line with our ordinance or best practice. So yeah, we could definitely bring something like that to you. Because that's something that they would be required to do anyways as a part of our city policy anyways.
Yeah, and I think you had also given public comment on that item at a council meeting, right?
Been a little while, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I can't remember when it went.
But
I don't know where,
No, I think,
they're still looking.
I don't even, yeah, I don't even remember exactly where it fell. It's,
I think they're
It's-
still looking,
yeah.
but they put out the RFP.
Yeah, I was just about to ask,
Yeah,
I don't know if we've gotten responses to the RFP yet.
Yeah, I don't think. we
And
have.
one of my concerns at the time was generally not getting responses for that. And we haven't been able to recruit a concessionaire. And
But I think what Commissioner Whedon is saying is that that should have been in the RFP that we're requiring that, which
I
makes sense.
think so
yeah.
too, but if you're not getting any responses to the RFP as it's written, adding further restrictions, I mean, at some point you have to take a step back and say, okay, how do we reset and do this the right way that gets us a concessionaire who is going to be a symbol of the best practices that we want to elevate in our.
So I can check in on that and then,
I think the timing is just one appropriate.
Yeah.
If there's nothing happening now, there's.
yeah,
I'm gonna open a lemonade stand.
okay. So is everyone in favor of adding these number 3 and 4 to potential future agenda items that can be brought back at a later time?
yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed?
Yes,
Little time delay.
Okay, sounds good.
Just because you've decided that they may be on an agenda doesn't mean they have to. You still have the discretion at any point to kick it down the road.
Have to raise one potential future item on top of those.
Yeah.
Have we passed that already?
Oh.
Just for the purposes of larger outreach, as well as particularly noting that last time we had the EV fair, we had a City of Los Altos banner and not a specific commission banner. Raise a discussion about the development of a specific banner so that we could do those do that more effectively. With the potential that we would discuss other forms of outreach that would be used with that banner, if it was developed. Throwing that up there is.
What is the agenda item?
Something that needs a meeting?
Well, that's all I'm asking right now is to see if it would need to be,
No, you're talking about developing a environmental commission banner that we set up at the fair?
banners left tablecloth, yeah. Something to,
Yeah.
that'll do to see.
No, me and Tanya can just talk about it and we can, design something and, order it.
Good enough. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Bruno.
Thank you.
Thanks for staying up till 4 or 5 in the morning.
It's actually 6:30. It's time for coffee for me. Hey, I just wanted to, I'm sorry, I missed it, but I just wanted to let you know that there will be at the Mountain View Community Center tomorrow at 11:30, from 11:30 to 1:30, there will be a discussion with Senator Baker and about the El Camino corridor. So if anybody was interested in attending, either going to the community center, Mountain View Community Center, or attending through Zoom, obviously, I'm gonna try to do it. I'm gonna try to go through Zoom because I think it's important, because I think there was the council voted to make sure that there are bike lanes in the Los Altos part of the El Camino corridor. So I think there should be an update on what the status is, when the work will start and so on. So if you're interested, obviously I wanted to let you know.
So I can quickly kind of brief everybody because me and Aida will both be there tomorrow. So technically Caltrans definitely dropped the ball, in my opinion. They only informed the city 3 weeks ago about this meeting with Senator Becker's office and everything. And also we hadn't even been fully made aware of the final design plans and everything that actually have been done. There's actually already been a contractor awarded the contract and the work is gonna commence early next year. So this is kind of an informational meeting, essentially just saying what they're doing. It will, since we're not the bookend portion of the project, so it's from Mountain View to Palo Alto, we will not be immediately affected in regards to, it's not going to start with us and it won't end with us. We're going to be in the middle of it at all times. But it's going to be an ongoing 300-day project in the El Camino corridor. Because just so the way that you guys can understand is the way they do it is they go from either the innermost or the outermost lane, and that's how they start it, and they go down the entire corridor. And then once they get back, then they go to the middle one and then back and so on and so forth. So that's how it's going to be. And so it's intended to essentially be a year-long project. So the entire corridor. And so there will be a removal of on-street parking in the Los Altos area. I don't know the specific details about essentially the bike lanes and stuff that was allowed or approved or whatever. I'm assuming that's obviously why we're, removing the bike lane or the parking stalls. But they will give us more specific stuff because a lot of it hasn't been made very publicized until like the last 3 weeks, unfortunately. So
Palo Alto is problematic.
Yeah.
Palo Alto hasn't gotten their act together to decide what they want to do with their portion.
Yeah.
And so it might end up affecting what we've agreed to do, because as Nick just explained, the process for the resurfacing, is to go lane by lane for the whole corridor. So there may still be some things that are up in the air that they don't have answers on tomorrow. I think it's kind of a go rodeo.
mhm. It's unfortunate. So not good planning on their part. But it is tomorrow. Meeting center.
I call,
Yeah. Meeting adjourned.
meeting is adjourned, yeah.
9:35. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Good morning.
Yeah, bye.